Hey everyone, welcome to This Week in People. I'm your host, Lars Schmidt, and as always, This Week in People is supported by my friends at PIN, the internal communications tool for the distributed workplace. We've got a lot to cover. Let's dig right in. As always, all of the articles and resources I'm about to walk you through are listed in the show notes, so check out the full URLs. I'm just going to give you a bit of a taste and walk you through some things that are worth your time in all things people from the past week. So you may have caught this LinkedIn as we're all making our kind of hybrid and return to workplace plans and or changing those plans in the current environment. LinkedIn came out and said they're actually going to be giving their leaders and teams choice in terms of how they want to structure things. So I think one of the earlier cases I've seen of a company actually kind of delegating those decisions down to the departments and the teams. So from an HR perspective, I think this is going to be pretty difficult to manage because obviously lots of different teams, lots of different choices, but I do applaud the effort. I think we're in this period of kind of experimentation right now where we're all trying different things and seeing what works best. And according to their internal data, at least 87% of their employees did want to come into the office a little bit at a time. So we'll see how this plays out over time. You know, this is an interesting thread from the co-founder of Loom, Shahid Khan, around ways that they scaled and grew. You know, Loom, if you're not familiar with them, it's a great tool for, video snippet communication, especially in this new kind of async distributed world. And so their co-founder had a really insightful thread around how they were successful at building a world-class early team as an early-stage startup without a lot of resources and money to hire recruiters. So, interesting thread. Definitely, I think there's some good takeaways for all of you that are hiring out there, which is probably 100% of you these days. As we talk all about hybrid, remote, all of these new kind of constructs, Peter Capelli, Professor Wharton, had this interesting article in HR Executive about just some of the, devil's advocate approaches around remote and hybrid work. Let's, be real about this. Like, we're in the early stages of this. This is going to play out over time. What we've experienced in terms of working from home has not been optimal, obviously, given all of the, circumstances of a global pandemic in our world. So we're in the early innings of this game and mapping out kind of how hybrid works. And so Peter maps out a few points of just the considerations. And again, I think a lot of the conversation around hybrid is, the benefits of hybrid. I think Peter talks about some of the, risks and things that you have to be mindful of as we're moving through this new work construct. So again, try to bring some balance to the perspectives here. And I think that was a good article just to read, to have some things that you should be thinking about. This is a piece, a lot of the conversation around, working from anywhere, working remote, hybrid, tends to be around technology companies, but also, startups and smaller organizations. And this is a piece on Cisco's decision to allow all of their 75,000 employees to work from wherever they want. And so you're going to be seeing some of this innovation as it relates to hybrid and remote constructs at scale, and Cisco is a great example of it. So for those of you who work in organizations that think you're too big to make that work, you might want to reference that article. This was a really interesting report from McKinsey on hybrid. And, really one of the biggest takeaways for me in this was the disconnect between the C-suite and the employees in terms of expectations of working remote and returning to an office at some point. And so there's some interesting statistics kind of pre-pandemic. We're not post-pandemic, but in pandemic views from the C-suite and also from employees and what they want. And so I think that there is, there's certainly a gap there, I think, in terms of expectations that will play out over time, but something to be mindful of as you're designing your strategy. And again, for those of you in HR who are watching this, you're kind of in the middle of those two worlds. And so hopefully with data like this, you can, bring those worlds a bit closer together. I know that's a difficult job that you're in right now, so good luck with all of that. This other piece was co-authored by one of my favorite people, Katarina Berg. She is the CHRO at Spotify, and had a really interesting piece on kind of maintaining a sense of belonging in hybrid workplaces. And they get into a couple different points that you need to be thinking about, some actionable tips, but this is something that really stood out to me around just culture and the evolution of your culture. And let's be honest, like if you were co-located, now you are, either hybrid or distributed or remote, that is going to impact your culture. If your approach in shifting to remote is to, latch on to your culture of February of 2020 and make sure that doesn't evolve, you're doing this wrong. So I think you have to be able to let go. You have to be able to build some new cultural, rhythms and systems within your organization in this new world. And so this piece is definitely worth your time, and probably worth a share within your C-suite as well. Delta. So we're in this environment where we had return to workplace plans. Lots of organizations were pegging September as when they would be opening some of their offices or more of their offices, getting people into the offices more, kind of timing that with when parents had kids back in school. Delta's, it's shifting that. So, Uber announced that they're pushing back their plans to open their office. I've been parts of lots of conversations with chief people officers who are doing the same. So, again, the situation is fluid, and the best laid plans are plans that have roller skates and are able to adapt and shift with these changing times. So, more to come on this, but again, the situation, as it has always been, continues to be fluid. And lastly, I wanted to spotlight a podcast that I recorded this week in this week's episode of Redefining HR with CocaCola's Global Chief People Officer, Lisa Cheng. It was fascinating. I think a lot of my podcasts, I'm speaking primarily with, tech CPOs, in organizations in the 500 to 2,000 range. And so really having a chance to talk with Lisa about how she thinks about innovation in HR at scale was fascinating. So if you haven't checked out this episode, I definitely recommend you give this a listen or a watch. This was another interesting report from January Ventures. They did a survey of a lot of their founders with some of their views towards, all things work in today's era. And so one of the things that was really interesting is the way they're thinking about building organizations now in terms of the decision between remote, fully distributed, hybrid, and co-located. And as will surprise nobody, many of them are really leaning in on building distributed companies, and the impact of that will be significant. It also gets into some of their perceived challenges around building kind of remote first company. Culture, no surprise, is kind of at the top of their list. But there's some other interesting data in here, particularly for those of you that are working in the venture-backed space and venture-backed companies. Here's some data that I think will be interesting to help you get a better feel for your environment now and also what's to come. And I want to end with two resources that I think will really be helpful. This is a really great set of templates from one-on-one meetings that you can download. So definitely go to this link and you can download some of these resources.
The chain came off.
Okay, I'll be out there in a minute. I'm going to leave that in because we're going to keep going through this episode. So, that was my youngest daughter, and they need help getting a chain back on a bike. So I'm going to end this so I can go out there and do that. But real quickly, templates here, resources you can use. And also, Almanac continues to be on fire. Here is their guide to remote onboarding. They've just been cranking out open source resources, and this one is really solid and worth your time as well. And then lastly, just want to give you the heads up that the next cohort of the Accelerator platform is now live and open for registration. So this cohort's going to run in October. There's a link in the show notes with the details on the dates for the synchronous and asynchronous courses and topics. But again, I'm really excited. We've completed 2 cohorts so far. This will be the 3rd, and the feedback has been tremendous. So again, the whole aim of these programs is to build CPO and CHRO readiness and network equity for modern people leaders. So if that's you, definitely go ahead and check out the resource and the link in the show notes and learn more. So with that, that's a wrap for today. Take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and I will see you next week.